The biggest driver of complaints usually is not the actual product. That insight that our customers are volunteering, it's gold dust. But AI is obviously redefining a lot of how businesses operate. But what is key is retaining the human element.
Welcome back to another episode of Xperience Beyond, the podcast where we dive deep into minds shaping the future of customer experience. I'm your host, Anand Nigam, co-founder and director at XEBO.ai. Today we have someone whose career is a masterclass in elevating customer experience in the banking sector. From leading voice of customer programs to driving change for vulnerable customers, he has worn multiple CX hats and worn them exceptionally well. He currently serves as Head of Customer Experience at APS Bank in Malta and also sits on the Global Board of Directors at the Customer Experience Professional Association. His work blends strategic vision, human empathy, and measurable impact in way few can match. Scott Lee Holloway. It's an absolute honor and pleasure to have you on Xperience Beyond podcast. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Anand, for having me. And wow, what an intro. Thank you very much. And hopefully I live up to it to your audience. But thank you kindly for your words and for having me on the program.
Absolutely. And Scott, we have picked up a very interesting topic, which has been your career and your journey and your experience. It's all about transforming banking CX. Resolution to customer advocacy through voice of customers.
That's right. That's what I live and breathe every day, essentially. So definitely close to my heart.
Awesome. Then talk something about it. You have led this VoC program for several years. How do you ensure that customer feedback is not just collected, but actually drives measurable change in banking products and services?
Right. Well, that's a great question. So first of all, listening to the feedback, collecting it obviously is the first step. You can't listen to the voice of your customers if you haven't collected it and you don't know what it is. But crucially, it's not going to drive any change if you then do nothing. So you have to obviously tune in and listen to what your customers are telling you. So I think the key thing here is to make sure that you're cascading it to the right places. So it's no good if your VoC or your customer feedback teams know exactly what all the problems are, know where all the pain points lie in your business, and just only they know this. There needs to be a broader awareness. So reporting, sharing it within the business is really important. But even more important is working directly with the stakeholders one-on-one when needed or as a cross-functional team to resolve, any pain points that do arise in their particular areas. So be an active part of solving that and really understand the mechanics of the business to be able to add value, and come with suggestions, not just with the problem, but with potential solutions to start the ball rolling on, this is how our customers are seeing this, how can we address that? So that's really, really important to make sure that the feedback is shared widely across the business. And then, as I say, work directly with the teams when needed, whenever there are any pain points identified.
Awesome. In your journey, are there any examples which you can share with us on any changes that voice of customer has driven in the products or services? That'll be great.
Sure. There's lots of changes every day, and it's not always the big, maybe impressive examples that you would kind of share on a press release. Sometimes it is those fine-tuning you do every day. So when you're really attentive and you're listening to the feedback coming in, it's not really that you even necessarily see it as change. It's part of the continual maintenance of your service delivery and your overall experience that you're constantly fine-tuning. So it's never fixed, it's never finished. It's something that we're continually refining, continually, working on improving and raising the bar. And we've done that in lots of ways. So we do listen really, really closely to our customers. Where we can, we involve that feedback in the whole process from the very, very beginning. So we don't wait until we introduce something to then see if it works or not only for the customers. We also draw on the feedback we already have to see, what do our customers need from us in this regard. And it's a daily let's say, progress and work that we do to make sure that everything we're doing is aligned to what our customers need from us. And it's not just something we say, it's really something we live and breathe at our business to make sure that our customers are kept at the core of everything we do. So there's lots of small wins during the course of this, and then there are bigger items And it's really important that we listen to, what our users need from us. And sometimes we're one of the first in the market to do something, sometimes it's not the case. But whatever stage we may be at with any particular product or service, it's always designed around our users' needs. So that's really core to what we do. And like I said, it's something that you do on a daily basis as part of your BAU operations.
Awesome. And Scott, when we were discussing earlier, you mentioned that complaint management in the bank is very close to you, and you believe that it's one of the biggest source of evolution and change, which can be directed towards the overall strategy of the bank and the way the bank grows. So, in your journey from managing complaints to shaping the entire CX strategy, what are the biggest mindset and process shifts required to turn these complaints into opportunities for loyalty building for the bank?
Yeah, another great question. So, and you've hit the nail on the head that when it comes to complaints management, the key thing is really that mindset shift. It's to not view complaints as something we have to do. We're in a heavily regulated sector, of course. And yes, it's an obligation that we have to listen to our customers' feedback. But the way we approach it is that if all of that was removed, we would still do everything the same way because we believe it's the right thing to do. One, for the customer, of course, and two, for the business, because it's that insight that our customers are volunteering. It's gold dust. It does tell us where we can improve, where we're getting it right, and where there's areas, to refine what we're doing. So it's really, really important. And what's important is that not just the complaints management function, but that everyone in the business views complaints as opportunities. Because whenever there is an area that needs to be refined or could have maybe, let's say, some improvements implemented, those will sit within different stakeholders' remits, of course, often more than one. So you need them to be on board and be listening and receptive to the customer's feedback to be able to make those changes. So it really, really is a mind shift. And the way that you can try to ensure that let's say, approach to complaints and they are viewed in the right way resonates through the business is continual messaging, training. I'm a really big believer in spending time with the teams, and we do that not just with the customer facing teams, but all teams in the business. So sometimes those changes that need to be made are back end functions that are not front of house. So that's just as important that they also understand, what it means for the customer and how important that is. So it's involving people as part of that process and making sure then to also, recognize when those stakeholders do make meaningful changes that have elevated the customer experience and, really them being part of that. So definitely it doesn't stop with the complaints management team. It's an enterprise-wide, effort towards the goals that we have and towards improving all the time. So it's again part of the continual improvement.
And in your experience, Scott, which are the biggest source of complaints in a banking sector?
So what I notice, this is something I ponder quite a lot because I notice that regulators in different markets tend to focus quite heavily on the functional element, the product itself. And in my experience, the biggest driver of complaints usually is not the actual product. I mean, of course, you can get some complaints relating to this, but it's more the overall, it's the service, and it's often parts of things like soft skills and that type of, let's say, feedback that we receive. So, and it's often isolated cases, or sometimes there's a broader issue where we can improve what we're doing. So it's very much important that we don't look at it only from a product perspective, and that's why the whole overall experience is important and the service delivery. And sometimes it's procedures, processes, sometimes it's just the way that we're handling certain situations. And it's really important that we take that feedback on board, because most of the time those customers speak for other customers. As we know, not every customer will take the time, to formally register their feedback, to complain. So we need to look at it independently and say, listen, could other customers be feeling the same way, and check if we're not sure and really make sure that that's understood. But it's hard to say one area because complaints are very, very broad. I mean, we work across the entire business, so there's not one key area that springs to mind right now, like I said, besides the maybe service side, more than product based. So that's the key trend I would say I've always seen across different businesses.
Awesome. And you've always spoken a lot about serving vulnerable customers. Vulnerability is a recurring theme of your work. So what frameworks or best practices do you recommend for banking institutions to serve these vulnerable customers with very, dignity, empathy, and efficiency?
Yeah, that's a great point. So as you said, it really is core to us. I mean, we're a community bank, and our customers and making sure that we do meet their needs and serve them in the right way really is integral to everything that we stand for, to what we believe in. Um, and hopefully that's the case, at most organizations. In a lot of markets, it's becoming increasingly regulated around vulnerable customer. And I do think that the FCA in the UK, the Financial Conduct Authority, is doing some great work here. What I am seeing, though, from that framework, the intentions are all spot on. But some of what I'm seeing is it's shifting into just reporting and how things look on dashboards and with, customer outcomes and so on. And I'm not always sure if that translates into as much of a benefit to those end customers as perhaps it would hope to do, or as it's, intended to do. So remember that it's always about the customer at the end of it, and more important than what their vulnerability is how that's impacting them, and then what we can do to support them. So it's just really taking a step back sometimes and doing a human approach. And again, training is key to that. We train all of our customer-facing teams, specifically on vulnerability. So that's really, really important.
That's awesome. I think it's very important because vulnerable customers are the ones which are the fence sitters. And if you don't handle them with care, you are losing customers. Absolutely.
Definitely, that's the thing. So with everything in CX, of course, it's doing the right thing by the customer who is a key stakeholder, but it's also highly beneficial to the business because, as you said, those are customers that may not be well served by your competitors, by other providers. So you can capture segments of the market that feel overlooked elsewhere, and that appreciate that they feel seen and heard and served from your organization. So it's definitely a huge opportunity. There's also huge reputational risks if you don't get that right, because of course it's a very sensitive area. And if you do not treat customers that could be seen as vulnerable in the right way, that's a reputational time bomb. So there's a number of reasons that the businesses have to take that seriously. And I think we're going to see that more and more and more across the board, across different sectors, that there'll be an increased focus on vulnerability.
Awesome. I think, it's very critical, important topic. I'm sure in your function, Scott, you must have worked with several CX measurement tools, techniques like NPS, CSAT, and so on. Now, these matrices are often debated. How do you, in your experience, do you balance qualitative and quantitative insights to get the most accurate picture of customer satisfaction in banking sector?
Right. So first of all, I'm a firm believer in those metrics, as you said, NPS, CSAT, customer effort metrics. I think all of these are important, and quantitative insight really, does tell you a lot. It's definitely a compass, a barometer of how you're doing. What it doesn't tell you is the why. So that's why on its own, it's not going to guide you in the right direction. You do definitely need to also look at qualitative insights to see why are customers feeling that way, whether it's positive, whether it's not. Why is that score the way it is? And that does extend beyond only even verbatim responses and, the surveys itself, for example. You need to overlay that with some of your unstructured feedback, some of the complaints like we've mentioned, to see, if there are particular areas of your service delivery that are driving dissatisfaction, or even things that you're doing well. It's not always negative, because it's really important to also understand what you do well, because you don't want to change that or move away from that. So that might be something that's really important to also put your finger on, is what is it our customers really do like about what we're doing. So that's why it's just as important to make sure you give the same level of focus to the unstructured feedback, to the complaints, to the feedback that your customers take the time to volunteer to you. They don't wait for a survey. They're telling you now and then that there's something they'd like to share. As you do, of course, to a survey, which is also important, but as you said, doesn't maybe provide the full picture.
And actually, these whys and the qualitative input that you get from the customers is what shapes your action points, because that's where you are able to identify what exactly needs to be done after the score, because score will just is a health check.
Exactly. That's exactly it. So the score tells you, as you said, kind of how you're doing. And then the why is really important to understand, first of all, why you're doing that way, and then where you need to address anything, to know what you need to address and how you should address it. And that's the interesting thing with customer feedback management and complaints, because it's not always a numbers game. Of course, if you're receiving a high number of complaints or a high number of dissatisfied customers on a particular area, you can see there's a problem there, and that clearly needs addressing. So that's easy to identify. Maybe less easy to address, but it's easy to identify where those pain points lie. But sometimes one customer can share a really great piece of feedback, and it happens a lot in friction points and pain points that are maybe less severe. So it might be that it's an annoyance for lots of customers, but it's a minor annoyance that no one's going to probably formally complain about. They'll just kind of, let's say, get on with it. But it doesn't mean that you want that to be the case. You want it to be seamless and smooth and, frictionless. So sometimes one piece of feedback, when you can see it's making sense and you can see that what the customer is saying is absolutely true, and that there's an opportunity there to improve that, can also be valuable. So yes, definitely look at the numbers, including, how many times a particular issue is arising, but then also look at each piece of feedback on its own merit and really pay attention to that. And bring it to the table. As I said, make sure that those stakeholders that need to be aware of that feedback are aware of it. That's always core to that. The same with the surveys as well.
Yeah. Thank you. And not just in bank, we have come across many stakeholders who have talked about the biggest challenge they see is getting the entire organization together when it comes to CX goals and objectives. The
Right.
cross-functional collaboration is so key to make the CX initiative successful. So you have worked closely with multiple units like retail banking arm, commercial arm, support functions, and so on. How do you foster collaboration across these silos to ensure that there is a consistent customer-centric banking experience across these units?
That's another great question. I would say in customer experience in CX, cross-functional collaboration is not a nice to have. It's critical to being successful at your CX ambitions and your aims, and obviously to deliver what the business overall requires when it comes to customer experience, because you do need to all be pulling in the same direction. We work across every single function in the bank. We're very hands-on, as I said. So when we're looking to improve something, we're an active stakeholder in that. We're part of that process, and I think it's really key to hear their feedback as well. So when we work with our internal stakeholders, we also hear their perspective and maybe some challenges they have. I'm sure there's nobody that wants to deliver something that's not optimal, but there's often challenges or restrictions, limitations that we might also be having to navigate as we conduct our various work. So it's understanding their point of view, involving them in the process, and then what I found is when stakeholders see the benefit of those improvements, of listening to that customer feedback, they become advocates automatically, and they're really believing in it because they see the results, they see the benefit for themselves. So that's really, really crucial. It's important, again, to do that work with all teams, not just those that are customer facing, but those that are further removed from the customer, because naturally they will be less in touch with the customer sentiment. So it's important to include them in that process. And we are one team. So I always say that customer experience departments and teams, they manage the customer experience, but they're not responsible for it. We all are as an organization. We all deliver our organization's customer experience. We all have a role to play. There's nobody in the business that doesn't have a role to play in that delivery, right? So it's a team effort. And it's important everyone understands that and understands the role that they do play. We hold workshops, which, like I said, are not just with customer-facing teams, it's with every team in the business. And a part of that is dissecting our CX strategy, going over it, and then we do break down the role that everyone plays. So, and we intentionally hold those cross-functionally, so there's different perspectives in every workshop. So it's initiatives like this can help. And then obviously, as I said, it's part of that ongoing work as well on a daily basis when we're working with the different teams to see how we can also support them. So we have insight, we have maybe some different ways of looking at things, at approaching the situation, and see how we can support them in getting it right. It's very much a team effort.
Oh, awesome. In fact, I was speaking to someone not in the banking sector, a CX leader, running the entire CX program. And he was saying that, bulk of the work is around CX, but he also spends a lot of time in building bridges. Yeah. And what he meant by building bridges is that he needs to get all his stakeholders aligned and, work towards this common cause for the CX, because without that, you cannot burn bridges. You have to build bridges.
He's completely right. I couldn't agree more with your friend. So definitely that's, like I said, it's not a side item to customer experience management. It's a really core part of it, is that we're all pulling in that direction. Because if there's any disconnects and anyone who's not, that's where there's going to be friction and pain points for your customers. I mean, it's quite simple. So, and there's not one silver bullet. There's a whole amount of work that goes into making sure that happens on a continual basis. But for example, in a couple of weeks' time, we're holding a dedicated customer experience offsite. We're spending a whole day together as the senior management team, so it's all of our senior leadership. And it's focused just on customer experience for an entire day. So, that really shows that the business sees the importance it sees in making sure we focus on CX, that we have our entire leadership, our CEO will be there, of course, as well, to be really spending some time together on how we can keep raising the bar for our customers. And we make sure we involve our customers as part of that as well. So definitely, your friend is spot on. And it really is something that you don't do in a day. Rome isn't built in a day. It's something that you do over time, and the bridge building is crucial. I fully agree on this.
Absolutely. This brings to our end of the session, and very important question. I would like to close this insightful discussion with this question: the future of CX in financial services. Given
Right.
your role on industry trends, board committees, you have been working with a lot of senior management people. What trends or innovations do you see shaping the next 5 years of customer experience in banking sector?
Another great question, and I think the key one that I know everybody would answer in a similar vein, most likely at the current time. But AI is obviously redefining a lot of how businesses operate, and CX is no exception to this. And I always believe technology is friend, not foe, but definitely when deployed in the right way. So it shouldn't be technology for the sake of technology. It shouldn't be just because we can. It should be, how do we deliver more value for our customers, in a more efficient way for the business? And that's how technology can help. And I think that as things get more and more streamlined and journeys become somewhat more uniform for customers, it's more important than ever that there is that focus on vulnerable customers, because you already mentioned that work stream, because there are customers that might fall through the cracks or might not, fit that process as well as others. So it's really important that there are safeguards there to pick up on that when somebody does need any additional support. But overall, I think that it's the way the world is changing. So it's not just banking, but because don't forget that it's not just businesses that are adopting these technologies, it's the end consumer. So pretty soon, I think that many of us will have AI assistants, with the agentic AI, which is not far away from where we already are today. And I believe that, that's going to change how many consumers interact with their service providers. But what is key is retaining the human element, even when things are automated, even when there's technology involved, somehow keeping that human connection. And we are social beings, so we crave that as well as consumers, that we do feel valued, seen, heard. It's not just the practical need, it's also customers' emotional needs. So that's important to make sure that everything we do is humanized.
Absolutely. So while we see this big trend of AI coming and impacting the businesses across the globe, including the banking sector, the human element is, there has to be a balance between AI and human element. Absolutely. I agree with you, and let's see how the future spans out.
Yes, it's going to be great to watch and see how it does develop, because one thing's for sure, technology is evolving at a rapid pace that I don't think we've seen before. So it's, from day to day, sometimes it feels like evolving. And I fully agree, it's about striking that balance. And that's why I believe, of course, I'm biased, but that customer experience is going to be more relevant than ever before, because it really is important that we understand how our customers are feeling when we're maybe slightly further removed physically at times, because the world is going more digital. But it doesn't mean we can't understand, how we're doing. So definitely that's going to be more core than ever before to the business.
Thank you. And while you said that the technology is rapidly changing, brings us to another section of our podcast, which is rapid fire.
Okay.
So with rapid fire, it's a fun section of the podcast, because here we are talking about something very which is not, the questions are nothing to do with right or wrong. It's just whatever impression you have, first answer is what we are looking at. So if you are ready, I will shoot some questions. I'm seeing these questions for the first time. I haven't seen them before earlier. So they are pure rapid fire for you as well as for me.
Perfect. That sounds good to me. So whenever you're ready, go for it.
Here's the first one. If you had to describe exceptional banking CX in one word, what would it be?
Wow, one word. Exception banking CX. Memorable, I would say. And of course, memorable for the right reasons, not the wrong reasons. But in one word, memorable.
Memorable. Awesome. One CX metric you did never run a banking program without.
I am a really avid believer in NPS, but it's hard to pick one because, of course, that's a relationship metric, and then you will need to also get transactional satisfaction ratings as well. But I believe NPS is still a great barometer, and because it is the world's most widely adopted advocacy metric, it's also great for benchmarking. So Net Promoter Score, I'm a big follower of Bain and Co. and Fred and the team. So yes, definitely Net Promoter Score.
My third question, one brand inside the banking or outside the banking, you are free to choose, you think is nailing customer experience right now?
Okay, well, let me choose one outside of my sector then. There are banks that I like, of course, and I follow really closely. But I think as CX professionals, it's important to not be restricted only to our industries and to look broader. I get lots of great ideas from other sectors, sometimes things that are really commonplace in that sector, but I haven't seen applied to the banking model. But there's lots of great companies that are getting it right. One of my favorites is Chewy in the States. It's a little bit of a David and Goliath story, of course, because they were essentially going up against Amazon in that space, the pet supplies space. But when it comes to the genuine connection that they build with their customers, it's really hard to top that. So they're one of my favorites.
Awesome. The most underrated skill in a future CX leader in banking, which he should master?
The most underrated skill. I don't know if it's an underrated skill because it is the core part of the role, but the ability to listen. And as I said, that's not only to the customer, it's to your internal stakeholders as well. In fact, we call them internal customers because they are absolutely part of what we're doing. And we're here to support just as much our internal stakeholders as we are our external. So the ability to listen is really key.
Absolutely. I agree completely with you on that. Final question, a small CX change you have implemented that had a surprisingly very big impact.
So just a recent one, because my memory means I'll just pull something that we were doing recently, but something that was surprising. We recently did a lot of work on autism friendly and autism awareness, and we became the first bank in our market to be certified as an autism friendly space. It's an EU-backed initiative and it's a fantastic program. And I knew that this would be really meaningful to those on the spectrum and their loved ones. And I had hoped that we would have the desired, let's say, outcome with those customers we were trying to reach. What was surprising is how much other customers really appreciated what we were doing. So we've had lots of great feedback and compliments about this initiative. And it's mostly from customers who are themselves not autistic and don't necessarily have any close loved ones who are either, but they just believe it's the right thing for the business to be doing. And they like to align themselves with businesses that their values align with the business's values, with their service providers' values. So that was surprising in the sense that a lot of the positive affirmations coming in were not from those that we were directly trying to support as part of that initiative, but just from the broader community who said, yeah, that's a great thing for you to be doing. Well done on that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Scott. This brings us to the end of the podcast. Thank you for joining us today and sharing such valuable insights from your incredible journey in customer experience. We talked about from building robust voice of customer programs to shaping the future of CX in banking and beyond. Your perspective on blending the entire empathy, strategy, and action is something which I'm sure our listeners will truly benefit, take away, and apply in their own work. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure to be on the program, and I've really enjoyed our conversation, and I hope that it's been of some use as well to your listeners. So thanks for having me anytime.
Absolutely, Scott. And to our audience, I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. If you found value in today's episode, be sure to subscribe to Xperience Beyond and share it with your network. Until next time, I'm Anand Nigam, co-founder and director of XEBO.ai, reminding you always to put the experience first, because when you do, everything else follows. Thank you so much.